Hello and welcome to another episode of the Folklore Podcast Book Club. On today's episode, I talk with Candia and Tony McKormack, founding members of the pagan rock group Inkubus Sukkubus, about their new book Tales of Witchcraft and Wonder, which looks at the lyrics behind 13 of the songs from the trilogy of albums of that name, and how they draw from the local folklore of their area of the country. Candia, Tony, welcome both very much to the Folklore Podcast Book Club. It's lovely to see you both on my screen.
And you, Mark. You. Yes. It's almost like being in the same room.
Yes. It's
I'm trying to think when we last were in the same room.
I think it was some time ago. It must have been when you played a gig in Boscastle. At the Museum of Witchcraft, which was quite a while ago now. Yes.
Gosh, yeah, so it's a long time. We're talking about 2-3 years, probably.
In the Wellington, wasn't
it? Yeah.
That's right. Yes, yeah, it's got to be 3 years, I think. So yes, we've not seen each other in 3 years, although we have spoken very, very frequently over the joy of social media. So before we move on, I probably ought to, in case there are people watching or listening who have maybe been on another planet for a number of years or have been otherwise engaged, just ask you both who you are and what you do and what Inkubus Sukkubus is all about. Let's start there.
Right, shall I introduce you? he's called Tony. Now we formed a band in 1989 when Tony and I met at college studying graphic design, and just because we got together, mainly we got talking and found out we had similar interests in witchcraft and folklore and vampirism, and then as we got talking about music as well, then we found that we enjoyed a lot of the same kind of music, and you were looking to form a band, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, I'd previously been in the band, and I'd finished with the band, and I'd gone back to college, and I was looking at forming another band, and so we formed Inkubus Sukkubus whilst we were still at college.
And here you are, a few years later, still going strong.
Yeah.
31 years later, yeah. 25 albums.
Yeah.
Everywhere, yeah.
And a lot of the songs that you write, because you both obviously write tracks between you, have their basis in folklore, myth, legend, stories like that, don't they?
Yeah.
Why did you decide to take that route with your inspiration?
Well, I think there's obviously lots and lots of artists who tend to write on the same subject stuff, and it's sort of it's very predictable. I mean, most people sing love songs or
We've got love songs too.
Yeah, but most of our songs are not really, and we just wanted to do something different, I suppose, something which was a little bit outside of the mainstream.
But also it felt natural because of our mutual interest in those subjects. And the more we got to know each other, the more we realised that there were a lot of the similar stories and that we actually had in common, which is strange. Obviously, we didn't grow up together. We didn't know each other until we met at college in our 20s. And so yes, it's just one of those things without trying to sound, I don't want to sound cheesy or anything, but that soulmate thing is was that a sneer?
No, not at all. It's absolutely allowed.
Yeah, well, that's it. It just felt that we had so much in common that it felt like it was a matter of time. We were meant to get together and create, be creative, and just bring I mean, Tony does a lot of artwork as well, and obviously when we met, we were both interested in art and graphic design, and as well as the other subjects. So it's just everything seemed to just fall into place, didn't it?
But what we actually want to talk about today really is your new book, Tales of Witchcraft and Wonder, which is based on a trilogy of albums from your collection in many ways. But look, you're songwriters, you're musicians. How come you're writing a book?
Well, there's a lot of people who have often asked what the stories are behind the songs, and most of them are actually some of them are actually previously unwritten down. So there are some stories which are just folk stories which you hear people say, oh, 20 years ago that happened to this woman, and it's quite often it's something which is it just because it's not been previously recorded, quite often it's a very interesting story, and quite often very tragic, and
like you're a dreamer story.
Yeah, I mean that's about a local woman who grew a datura bush in a garden in the Cotswolds, and it changed her personality. And from being quite a shrewish, prudish person, she became a very sensual person, found herself a young man, and during the winter, when the bush died off, her personality went back to normal, and it had tragic consequences.
It really did. It is a very tragic story, as a lot of folk tales or tales that become folk tales that are based in history absolutely do. And there are some fascinating stories in here. As you say, some of them are quite well known. Bella and the Witch Elm is quite a well known story, for example, and others are quite obscure. But they're all from your area of the world, aren't they?
They are, yeah. Yeah, like there's quite a few actually from Cheltenham, and they're stories which I was told had happened, and a little bit of research as well sort of backed them up. I mean, I think it was essential to do research on them to actually, delve into them deeply. Otherwise, you can just be sort of spreading rumours and things. But I think most of the stories are definitely very localised to our immediate area, really.
But on the other hand, like you're saying about making parts, so I think that's part of the richness of folklore.
Yeah,
is that they do change. It's an organic thing that they change with the generations and with each telling, and so I think, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with it, that it's allowed that certain amount of they should express not just what's been told to the storyteller, but also what the storyteller gleans from that story and makes it their own. And so it may be that they'll add something and they'll tell that story, and then another person will add something of their own. So, I don't think we should get too bogged down with facts, even though we did research, as much as we can. There should always be that sort of fluidity of the telling too. It's allowed, I think. With folklore.
It really is. It's part of the whole process, as you say. I mean, going back many years, this was an oral tradition. Stories were handed down purely by the retelling, and they were shaped in that way. And this really does nothing different. Although I have to say, it is very well researched as well, and it is presented as a decent study into these stories as well as a new retelling of them. How did you go about doing the research for the stories that you picked?
It's a mixture of things. We've got a lot of books ourselves on folklore, and we've also there's a great resource which is 10-minute walk down the road from us, which is the Gloucester Archives. Obviously, it's not open at the moment, but when it is, it's just the most astonishing place just for delving into it. And they couldn't be more helpful. And obviously, every area has its own archives.
And there's a great deal of stuff on there which you would not find online at all.
So, because it takes a bit of digging through dusty files and that. But it's a joy. It's a joy, and I'm sure a lot of people in that whichever part of the world they're from enjoy their local archives. It's as Tony says, it's that way of finding out. They may be well-known stories, but you can often find that little bit that hasn't necessarily been written down before. Which gives a bit more colour.
Yeah, I was able to find the story about St. Anne's. I was able to find out things which I previously did not know anything about the case and the history of the people connected with it, which is just not generally known. But I was able to find, just sort of small pieces of information which add an added dimension to the story, which may also add to the explanation of it to some extent.
Is it a particularly rich area for folklore where you live, do you think? Do you have particular stories that are prevalent, particular themes? Was it quite broad in its approach?
There's a lot of medieval history around here. And also, as Cheltenham was a boom town round about 1820, there's a lot of things that went on then. There's a lot of stories and a lot of gossip from that time. I think with the general Gloucestershire things, though, it tends to be more sort of the sort of medieval period when most of the stories tend to have happened, when there was a strong ecclesiastical presence in the area, which there sort of isn't quite as much now. I mean, we've had sort of Black Friars, White Friars, and Grey Friars all within the city of Gloucester, and there's a lot of stories around them, and also the Civil War, things that happened around about that period of time.
Yeah. There are lots of stories that are obviously universal, like the shape-shifting stories, which you'll find across this country and others. Stories of the sort of woman to hair, that kind of thing. But then there are also ones that are very much of the geography of the place, such as ones linked to the river and it being tidal. So they'll those will be peculiar, I think, to not just Gloucester, but this part of Gloucestershire, where you're nearer the river, and it's a very strong presence here.
Do you think that when you come to choose which stories to include, because as I say, the whole premise of this book is that it explores the stories behind the lyrics of some of your songs from the trilogy of albums, which makes up Tales of Witchcraft and Wonder. When you came to choose the 13 stories that went into this book from the many, many more songs that are on those albums, how did you decide which ones to use? Did you shape this because the darker stories fit the image of the band, for example? Because not all of the stories are necessarily dark. Or did you choose them based on other ideas?
I think they were the ones that came to us immediately. I think we wanted there to be 13, because 13. And then we also wanted it to be so that it was a shared telling, which is why we alternate the chapters between myself and Tony, and so we wanted to look at 13 songs, like sort of 6 of one, 7 of the other, that immediately were crying out to be written about, and ones that we've probably been asked about a lot, you know, about the story behind certain ones which are very local, like the Witch of Berkeley one, which is, you know, very much of this area, and that people wouldn't necessarily know. And so it's, you know, we're sort of heartened by people asking us and wanting to know more about the songs, which is great. That they're not just listening to it and enjoying the music, which is wonderful, but, you know, if they really want to know what's going on lyrically as well, you know, then that's I think great.
Also, that they had to be songs which are on which were actually within the trilogy. We've got other similar songs which are on other albums, and maybe if we did a second book, it would incorporate songs which are go outside of the trilogy. There's like the Lake of Suicide and Dark Sisters, which are local stories as well, and maybe we'll incorporate some of those as well if there's going to be a second book. But I don't know if we'd do another book which would be completely bound within the sort of Witchcraft and Wonder 3 albums. I think that might be a bit too limiting, really.
Yeah, you've certainly got a lot of scope of other things to choose from, haven't you? But you've got these 13 stories in here, and the book does come with a CD of those 13 tracks on it as well, so that if people aren't familiar with the songs, then they have the lyrics there in the book, they have the song to listen to, and then the story behind it. What are your favourites from the ones that you both worked on in there? Candia, you go first.
I think Sabrina's, obviously, personally, it's a big one for me. Just a personal love of the river, and just feeling an affinity, and that is one that's it's peculiar in as much as it's not one story. I think most of the other ones, they tend to be, it's about a story, something happening, and whereas that one is about the place. That's about experiences of being close to the river and what it means to the people who live near her, using make as their trade. You know, fishermen, there's elvering there, and there's salmon fishermen. So it was a way, and it still is to some, a way of making a living, but also it's made the land fertile within the horseshoe bend of the river, and unfortunately you need to go in the graveyards of the 5 villages that are within the Sevenside horseshoe bend, and see the graves, like so many lost to the river. That, you know, it's a potent force, and so personally that's one that means a lot to me.
How about you, Tony?
Yeah, I think the story, well, I wouldn't say sort of favourite, because it's a bit of a unhappy story, is the Rape of Maud Bowen, and I always thought that was a story that sort of needs to always be remembered, because it's essentially about a abuse of power, and it also is a story of retribution, which I think is a good thing. It's a genuine story of where people get their comeuppance for doing bad things, and obviously that very rarely happened, but this is one case of where it did happen, even though that's obviously quite dark in itself. And it's it's a story which is about a sort of like external vengeance taking place, and so therefore it tends to be a story of hope, but coming from a dark place, I think.
Yeah, as you say, these stories often, there's a need, isn't there, to retell them and to remember them in this way, because they do carry some quite important themes as well. So yeah, I think it's valuable to do that. You're right. The illustrations in this book are fantastic as well, and very evocative of the themes of the stories, and that's something that you also have responsibility for too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It seemed natural to illustrate it ourselves, just because we enjoy doing that, and that we've both got our own kind of feelings about how we envisage them. So it just seemed natural just to do it, and it's all sort of pen and ink. It's all black and white illustrations.
Did you illustrate your own stories, or did you work on each other's?
Yeah, we tended to illustrate our own stories. Yeah.
Do you think that your styles kind of naturally fit doing that with your story? So you have a particular way of telling your story that your particular way of illustrating fits with as well?
I think from my point of view, some of them do, but some of them, like the picture with Chura dreaming and lost to the sea, I wasn't quite sure whether those really fitted, but the smaller pictures did.
Certainly with those stories, particularly the undeniably erotic aspect of a lot of Tony's drawings. It's just, I mean, the Chura Dreamer one.
Yeah.
It's a very erotic story, and it's a very erotic picture to go with it, which it just beautifully illustrates it. And so you're looking shy now. Sorry. No, it does. It's it just fits really well. It's just
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Take the compliment, Tony.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy this process? This is your first crack at writing a book, isn't it?
It was a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. I know it sounds a funny thing to say, but yeah, I mean, I thought it was because it's one thing I've always wanted to do writing. I always wanted to write something ever since I was a child, and I thought it wouldn't really happen because I didn't go to a very good school or anything, and I certainly wouldn't be expected to grow up to write things, or they probably would have been surprised I even wrote song lyrics, but yeah, so it's always been there as one of those to-do things, and now it's been done.
Yeah, and of course, lockdown, we weren't gigging, so
yes, yeah.
So that was the thing with us being in a band and sort of waving goodbye to all these wonderful gigs that we had lined up, and sort of thinking, well, this seems like the perfect time to crack on with it, and and it sort of flowed came together surprisingly well. I mean, it wasn't without its sort of pain and a bit of angst and a bit of sort of fighting procrastination, sort of thing. Get on with it, do it.
Yeah,
but, I actually find it slightly easier than bringing out an album, though. Really, it seemed to flow a lot more naturally.
I mean, Candia, you work with words in your day job quite a bit. So did you find this a very different process to the kind of work that you do normally, or did you kind of get into it quite easily?
I think because this is very, very much, I don't want to say it's self-indulgent, but it's obviously these are themes that we're very, very interested in. And well, actually, I mean, with Cotswold Life, a lot of my writing tends to be interviewing artists and doing the occasional sort of history interviews as well. So yeah, in a way, I'm kind of picking and choosing what I enjoy writing about with Cotswold Life as well. So yes, but it's just different aspects. I mean, we've all got such very different aspects of ourselves. this is just the one that we can really indulge a certain aspect. And I say with Cotswold Life magazine, that's another side of myself that I can really enjoy and express myself that way too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does show that you both really enjoyed this process in the writing. I mean, I absolutely loved this book, which I read in 2 days purely because I had to go to work. Otherwise I would have read it in one, to be honest. But it did take 2 days because I had to stop and do some work in the middle. And the love for the subject comes across, and the research, as I say, comes across as well. It's a very, very well crafted book. Have you had an equally good response from people who aren't me?
Yes, but they've all been nearly as lovely as you. So it's been surprisingly well received. I mean, we've gone to the second printing of it, which there's just no way we imagined that happening and so quickly.
The third as well. So
so
it's going very well.
It's been very, very well received, and I mean, we're getting out to quite a different audience as well. I mean, we've never been hugely popular in our in our home area as a band. I mean, we play. That sounds terrible, but we don't play locally a great deal.
No.
Are you the equivalent of the village witch who lives in the cottage at the end of the road in your area?
Children cross the road when they see Tony coming. Yeah. But we're finding we're getting orders from a lot of people who are the villagers all around us, and we think, oh, this is great. And these are people we both grew up in Gloucestershire, and we've been running a band for 31 years in Gloucestershire, but we don't play all that often locally. So a lot of these people don't actually know of the band, or they think we died like 20 years ago or something like that. So it's a joy to when the orders come through and we say, oh, there's an order from Dursley, and there's an order from Cam, there's an order from Stroud, and it's lovely. It's just sort of a bit of a warm feeling that it's a new group of people we're getting out to, and they're enjoying the local folklore.
Excellent. I'm really pleased to hear it. Does this mean you're going to do it again then now?
Hopefully, yes. Yeah. We hopefully have another book out next year. Hopefully. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
There's lots of other stories.
There are.
Yeah.
But then that poses you a problem, doesn't it? Because this is taken from 3 albums, so that means you've got at least another 20 that you can pick and choose from if you're going to go that same route. How would you even begin to narrow it down?
Well, I think it would have to be stories which are interesting and have a sort of a certain amount of controversy about them. I think people like to have something which is a little bit of a challenge to think about.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great ones that just itching to write again, like the Ruadine Bears, which is such a. I mean, it's kind of within living history for almost for people of 90s, 100. It's but the Frenchman coming to the Forest of Dean with dancing bears, and them being accused of killing the local children, and it's just so that's one that I really want to get stuck into. Another one is the Yuli Gorilla, which it's of course that's in here, but there are lots of ones that we haven't touched on yet, but it's there's a rich scene to
I think as well that it'd probably be better if they were albums, songs which are in the similar sort of style to the ones on the Witchcraft and Wonder album as well. I think you know, that sort of sound has a sort of that feel of it to, you know, which lends itself towards folklore. Whereas some of the more rocky ones, it's difficult to actually see it in that way, in quite the same way, I think.
Yeah, although it could still work, you know. Yeah. We do have sort of rock songs which are got a very folkloric kind of basis to them. So you know, I think it could still work with those. And we're working on a new album at the moment, so it could be that there are new songs that will lend themselves to being written about in such a way and like explored and researched, and you tell people the story behind them.
So you've got plenty there that you can choose from, haven't you? I'm sure you have a few books out of this process,
Well, one at a time.
Yeah. But look, you've gone to a second printing for this one, so you know that it works well. You know that people think it's a good book. So if people want to get a copy and they haven't got a copy yet, how should they go about doing that?
From our website at inkubussukkubus.com.
All the K's.
Yeah, all K's. inkubussukkubus.com or paganfinemusic.com. Either one of those will get you straight to us. And
if you live in the Shire, there's a really nice independent bookshop that we like to support as well, which is called the Yellow Lighted Bookshop in Nailsworth. And also when we did a book launch at the Folk of Gloucester, which is the old folk museum, and when they reopen, when they're allowed to reopen after lockdown, they've got copies there that they'll be selling. So yeah, if you live locally, those are two places you can go out and get them.
Excellent. I should put links on for that so that people can go and get a copy from you, which I know you have an option on your website for them to select if they want it signing too, don't they? So
that's right.
Sign a copy from you too. And I would advise everybody to go and do that because this is a really lovely little book. So Candia, Tony, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about it. And I hope we see another one from you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Book Club. Don't forget that on the Folklore Podcast website, you'll be able to access book reviews for this book and for many other books of folklore and folklore-related themes. And if you want to support the podcast in any way to keep us producing content, then there are links on the website also to sign up for our Patreon or to make a small one-off donation. Any help that you can give is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you again next time.